There's a strange rule in property auctions. The more dangerous a house looks, the cheaper it becomes. Sometimes so cheap that no adult will touch it. One abandoned building dropped to a $5 minimum bid. Everyone laughed when a 14-year-old homeless boy raised his hand. But the night a blizzard trapped a family on the road, that same ruined house became their only chance to survive. Most people think survival begins with opportunity, a good job, a safe home, someone willing to help. But sometimes survival begins with the exact opposite. No plan, no safety, just one small decision that everyone else thinks is a mistake. When that boy lifted his hand in the auction room, people didn't see courage. They saw a kid wasting the last money he had on a pile of collapsing boards. What they couldn't see yet was how a place everyone had given up on could become the one place someone needed most. As you watch, pay attention to the moment when that ruined building stops looking like a mistake and starts looking like a lifeline. Before we continue, answer this in the comments. If you were in Daniel's position with only $5 left, would you risk it on that house or walk away? Your answer helps this story reach people who understand how one small decision can change everything. Now let's go back to the day a 14-year-old walked into a county auction with nothing and walked out owning the one place nobody else wanted. Daniel was walking past the county courthouse when he noticed a small crowd near the entrance. Farmers, older men, and curious locals stood around a paper sign on the wall. It read, "County Auction for Unclaimed Property." Daniel had not planned to stop, but one line caught his eye. Abandoned property with a minimum bid of $5. Curious, he moved closer to read the listing. The building described was an old structure outside town. Everyone knew the place. A collapsing house abandoned for years. The roof sagged and windows were shattered. People joked the place was cursed. No one wanted it, which is why the starting bid was so low. Most people at the auction had come for tools and scrap equipment, not a ruined house. When the clerk reached the abandoned house, he called for the minimum bid of $5. No one responded. A few men laughed. Someone joked the place should be burned instead. Then a small voice broke the silence. Daniel raised his hand and said he would take it. Heads turned toward him. The clerk asked if he understood what he was buying. Daniel nodded. $5 was everything he had left. The clerk shrugged and struck the table once. Sold. Just like that, Daniel Carter became the owner of the most unwanted house in the county. When Daniel finally walked out to see the house, reality struck hard. The roof had partially collapsed. Boards hung loose from the walls. The front door leaned on a broken hinge. Inside, the floor was dirt and warped wood. Wind pushed through the cracks. Daniel stood in the doorway staring at what was now his home. Most people would have turned around then, but Daniel stepped inside. Even a broken shelter was better than sleeping outside. The first night was brutal. Cold air slipped through every gap. Animals rustled in the ceiling. Daniel slept curled in a corner, wearing every piece of clothing he owned. Morning came slowly. Daniel had barely slept, but the house was still standing. And so was he. That was enough to begin. He cleared debris from the floor and dragged broken boards outside. Wood was sorted into piles that might still be useful. His hands blistered quickly. Rusted nails cut his fingers. Still, he kept working. Slowly, the interior began to change. Not comfortable, but possible to live in. Each morning, Daniel walked into town searching for small jobs, carrying boxes, cleaning sheds, hauling scrap wood, whatever people would pay him for. Sometimes he earned a few dollars, sometimes only a sandwich. Every nail he bought mattered. Every board he salvaged mattered. People in town watched quietly, expecting him to give up. Winter was approaching fast, but Daniel kept working. A hardware store owner named Mr. Bennett eventually noticed him. One evening, Daniel stepped inside just to warm up. The old man studied him and recognized the boy with the $5 house. Daniel admitted he was trying to repair it slowly. Mr. Bennett reached under the counter and set a small box on the table. Inside were bent nails, twine, and leftover scraps. Daniel hesitated, saying he could not pay. Mr. Bennett shook his head and pushed the box closer. He said Daniel could repay him someday. That small gesture changed everything. With those supplies, Daniel began real repairs. He reinforced the weakest wall and patched roof holes with scrap metal. Eventually, he built a crude door that actually closed. Soon winter arrived. Snow fell early in November. Cold winds swept across the prairie, and temperatures dropped below freezing. The house was still cold inside, but the wind no longer screamed through the walls. The roof held against the storms. Weeks passed as snowstorms came and went. Some nights Daniel stayed awake listening to the house. He learned the creak of beams and the whistle of air through cracks. Snow sliding off the roof made a soft sound in the dark. Then one night in December, the real test arrived. A blizzard swept across the plains. Daniel had just cleared snow from the roof when he saw movement outside. 3 figures struggled toward the house through the storm. A man, a woman, and 2 small children. Their truck had slid off the road miles away. The youngest child was barely conscious from the cold. Daniel pulled them inside immediately. He fed the fire and wrapped the children in blankets. Warm water and cloths slowly brought their body heat back. For a long time, the smallest boy did not move. Then suddenly the child gasped and began crying. The tiny house filled with the sound. The mother broke down in tears. The father sat against the wall, exhausted. Daniel sat nearby, shaking slightly. That night, the broken $5 house became something more than shelter. It saved a life. And that's the part most people miss when they hear this story. It wasn't really about a cheap house. It was about a decision. A 14-year-old boy looked at something everyone else had already judged as worthless and decided it was still worth trying. That broken place didn't become important because it was strong. It became important because someone refused to give up on it. And sometimes that's how the biggest changes start. Not with perfect opportunities, but with the things nobody else believes in. So, before you leave, I'm curious about one thing. In your opinion, what was the real turning point in this story? Was it the moment Daniel bought the house? The moment Mr. Bennett helped him? Or the night the storm brought that family to his door? Write your answer in the comments. I read them all, and the details people notice often shape the next stories on this channel. And if you enjoy stories where small decisions quietly change everything, subscribe. Because there are many more moments like this hidden in history. Times when the most unlikely people turned the most unlikely situations into something meaningful. And the next one might surprise you even more.